One of the most important jobs we have as writers is to bring readers into the story. And the best way that we can do that is through the use of point of view or internal dialogue. The reason that that is important, the reason that that's the best way to do it is because we allow the reader to get into the character's head, and being in the character's head, they get to experience what the character is experiencing, and therefore better experience the story. So today we're going to talk about point of view and internal dialogue.
You have a story to tell, but you don't know where to start. Let me show you how to free your story. I teach you how to write and how to dig deep in your soul to release your story and make a difference in the world.
Welcome to the Julia Amante channel. If we're just meeting, I am Julia Amante. I'm a women's fiction author and here on Fridays to give you a few writing tips. So let's talk about point of view. You might not have given much thought of who is going to tell the story. You've thought about who your character is going to be or who your main character is going to be, and you figured, okay, well, I'm going to be telling the story through this character's point of view. And probably for the most part, you're right. That is the point of view that you're going to use because that's your main character. However, you might also choose other points of view within your story. So you might have two main characters. You might have subplots where the other characters, the minor characters, also have their perspective, or you're telling the story through their point of view. So there could be multiple points of view in your story. And it also is going to depend on the genre. So for example, if you are writing a mystery, the point of view is pretty much settled from the beginning, right? So from chapter 1, you kind of know that the point of view has to be from that main character who is typically the detective, right? Who's solving the mystery. And the reason that most of these stories, first of all, they're told in first person. So again, you're definitely in the head of that main character. And it really makes sense because we are finding clues and we are discovering the story through what that detective sees and finds, right? So as he is discovering things, the reader is discovering also what is going on and what's happening in the story. So it really makes perfect sense for that type of story for it to be the point of view of that main character detective. There can be, well, probably not if it's a first person point of view, but if it's a third person point of view, you could also have the point of view of the villain or you know, of another character. But typically in that genre, it's going to be a first person narrator, and it's going to be the point of view of the detective. And other genres, for example, romance, which I've written a lot of, you can have all types of points of view. You can have the hero and the heroine, you can have the younger sister, you can have the secondary characters. So there, and then it depends on the type of romance too, right? So if you're writing a romantic suspense, for example, you can have the point of view of the villain, for example. So, but typically in a romance, it's going to be the point of view of the hero and the heroine, or sometimes just the heroine, just whoever is telling the story. So again, depends on the genre, and it depends on what your goal is as the writer, what you want the reader to discover. I started this video by saying that what we're doing is we're bringing the reader into the story, right? So mysteries are not the only ones where the reader really wants to be involved and discover things. It's really all genres where the reader wants to discover what is going on. There's a really great feeling sometimes when you are a reader and you can guess really what's going to happen next. I mean, you don't want to write something so simple that the reader already knows how everything is going to go, but the reader does get some satisfaction by understanding, you know, where this is going and making guesses and saying, oh, okay, I knew that that was going to happen. You know, I'm so smart, I figured it out, right? So readers do like that. And so getting into the character's head is a very important part of bringing your reader into the story. So I approach each chapter as I write by asking myself, okay, what is it that is going to be revealed in this chapter? And what is it that the reader needs to know? And through whose eyes should the reader be seeing this happen, right? So again, I write romance, women's fiction, right? So I'm typically going to have the hero and the heroine, and those are going to be my two characters that are going to tell the story, right? So I'm going to tell the story through either both of their point of views usually. So when there is a scene, an emotional scene, or some scene where something is, somebody's going to discover something, there's going to be something important. Hopefully every scene is that way, but there is that I have to make a choice, right? Okay, who is telling the story? Is it going to be through her point of view? Do we want to let the reader know how she's feeling about this issue? Or do we want the reader to understand the hero and how he's feeling about the situation that is happening? So every scene I start with that, right? With, okay, who's the point of view character here? Sometimes it's instinctual. I mean, you obviously sometimes you're like, okay, I'm telling it from her point of view. She's discovering that he's leaving town or something's happening, and he already knows that. I really don't need to tell it through his point of view, but I do need to tell it through her point of view, because now she's going to have a reaction to him leaving or whatever, right? So sometimes you don't really have to think about it. You know whose point of view you're going to use because you're a writer, and it's kind of an instinct that we know, right? But sometimes you want to really evaluate it and say, okay, how is it going to come across to the reader? What is the best way for my reader to gain this information and to understand the whatever character better? So think of it not only as, okay, how am I going to tell this plot story, this plot point, but think about how the character is going, whose body that character is going to embody. And it's an emotional experience, right? What do you want them to feel? So the heroine is scared, upset, nervous. Then we want to be in that character's head, because we want to feel those emotions. We don't only want to know what she's thinking, we want to feel what she's feeling. We want to have those emotions. We want to have that experience that character is having, and therefore we need to see it through her point of view. And a really great part about being in a character's head is that we get to hear that internal dialogue, right? We're always talking to ourselves, aren't we? We're always saying things about ourselves, to ourselves and about ourselves. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. What was I thinking, right? Things like that. So we want to hear that in the character. So let's say, for example, that a hero is walking down the street, sees his ex-girlfriend with a new guy. So what thoughts is he having? He could be having all kinds of thoughts, right? Yeah, maybe he crosses the street to say hi, or she crosses the street to say hi to him. They start to chat, but what else is going on? Like maybe he is smelling like her perfume. This perfume gives him a memory. It could be a negative or a positive. It could be like, oh, wow, I remember when, she'd get out of the shower and spray that perfume, and how wonderful it was. Or it could be the complete opposite. Like, oh my God, this brings back so many, I'm so grateful I don't have to smell that every single morning when I get up and she's taking a shower, right? So what is he thinking? And that's super important, because that tells us a little bit about him, his state of mind, how he feels about this other character, right? And that relationship. So that internal dialogue is super important. And the only way we get that is if we can be in that character's POV, in that character's head. So we talked about reader participation, right? And how bringing your reader into a character's head, into their POV, you are allowing that character to participate in the story, to become your character, essentially. And if done well, if done artistically, we are getting a full experience of what it's like to be this character. We are understanding this character's belief systems. We are understanding how this character, sees the world. And we're allowing the reader to get the full enjoyment of being this other person. And the really cool thing is that because we are essentially becoming this character as the reader, we can start to anticipate how the character is going to act in a certain situation. So if they can see that something is coming in the future, right? So this whatever is happening, right? There's going to be a wedding. There's going to be something happening, and we know that that's coming in the future. We can anticipate how this character is going to react in that situation, because we have been living as this character for the last few pages. We've seen how he reacts. We've seen how he thinks. We've seen how the things that affect him don't affect him. And this is why it's important. And sometimes readers can see when a character is acting out of character, when we can say, you know what, I don't think that character would do this. Well, we say, how would we know that? Like, how would the reader know that? It's my character, I'm creating it. No, this reader has been living as your character, because you've allowed him to be in that character's point of view. And now they can anticipate the reactions of this character. And if you write it odd, like you write something that the character wouldn't do, the reader can pick up on that. So because the reader is participating now in your story, they understand who this character is and they're waiting to see how he reacts. And they are, they are hoping that he's going to react the way that they think he's going to react. He could react differently. He could have, but as long as it's explained by the author, like why is he having this odd reaction? But somebody who is very kind and meek and understanding all of a sudden explodes for some reason. There better be a really good explanation, because your reader is going to say that it's not in his character. I wasn't expecting that, right? Why is he doing that? Well, there has to be a really good reason. Otherwise, it's going to seem bizarre to the reader. And, we've all read books where we are, as the reader, we can see these things happening. For example, I read a book not too long ago where the heroine was telling the hero that she is pregnant. And even before the scene was coming, I could see that she was going to talk to him. She was going to tell him the truth, right? I knew he was going to freak out, because I'd been in his point of view. I knew his dreams. I knew that he had these dreams of doing other things, of being successful in other areas of his life. That wasn't in his plan to actually become a father. And I could see that coming. So being in his point of view was a really good choice, because although I knew how he was going to react, it was great to see him and see that reaction that I was already expecting him to have. Another example, if you've ever watched the movie Jerry Maguire, where he's about to get fired, you kind of know how he's going to react, because his personality, right? So that when he is told at a restaurant, we're busy with a lot of people, that he's getting fired, you can see the rage, and Tom Cruise does a really good job of acting, right? Because you can see the rage building in his face, and because he's so angry, and that was the reaction he was going to have. Again, because we were in that point of view. Movies are a little different, right? Because you can't really get in their point of view. You can, sort of, but not the same as you can with novels. So remember that well-done POV allows the reader to participate in the scene, to anticipate, to be part of who your character is, and to really understand your character well, right? All feelings, what he would do, what he would say, things like that. Okay. The next thing that you want to consider is sometimes you don't really want the reader to be that close to the character. You don't want your reader to know things that your character is thinking, right? So in that case, what you would want to do is choose a different point of view character, where the other character is only guessing at what that other character is thinking. So in that example of the woman who's telling the boyfriend, right, that she's pregnant, then instead of being in his point of view and feeling that reaction, feeling what he's feeling, having his thoughts of like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? I have this dream, I have these things, these goals I'm not going to be able to achieve. You could be in her point of view, right? And by being in her point of view, all you're doing is guessing, where you're expecting a smile, he doesn't smile, right? And she's like, oh my God, he's not happy, right? Or what is he thinking? So that's, probably the best way to approach when you don't want to be that close. You don't want the reader to really know what that character is thinking. Then you're going to choose a different POV character. And this is done a lot in thrillers, those type of novels, action, right? Where you have maybe a police officer, detective, and a villain. And we jump into the villain's head, and maybe there's a bomb or there's something, and he's setting the officer up, or he's setting somebody up, and he sends them over there saying there's going to be a bomb, or he says something else, right? There's a victim, there's a kidnapping victim or something, knowing that really there isn't, but there's a bomb there and the person is going there, and you're watching it from the villain's point of view, not from the detective's point of view, not from the other person's point of view, as he's anticipating, like, this is going to happen, this guy's going to blow up. Well, this creates a lot of tension, right, in the reader, because you're like, well, is he going to die? Is this building going to blow up? Or how is he going to get away with, how is he not going to blow up? So that, it's used effectively in those type of novels, because again, we want to create that tension, and that we don't want the reader to know everything. So, those type of books, it works really well. So most stories then are told from first person or third person point of view. There are the omniscient point of view where it's the godlike, telling, the puppets what everybody is doing and what everybody is thinking. And even looking into the future, if she had known this was going to happen today, she would have chosen a different path, right? So that's the godlike voice that's talking and telling you what's happening with all these characters. That's one way that isn't used too often, and definitely not in commercial fiction, more in literary fiction. There's also the second person point of view, which again is not used very often. That's the you point of view, which can be used effectively more in nonfiction, right? If you're trying to invest and you want to do this, right? The author is talking to the reader. But in fiction, it just sounds weird, right? Like you see your girlfriend across the street, you walk over there and you talk to her, you smell her perfume. It just starts to feel really weird, and it's honestly not necessary because it's a lot better either using an I point of view, right? So you're really getting what that character is thinking. The you point of view seems to want that effect, like make you feel like you are that person. You're doing this, you're doing that. But honestly, the I point of view has a better effect. Like I do this because the reader identifies with me, right? So if you're telling me I do this, I do that, I'm already putting myself into that character's head and into their situation, into their body. So, you can definitely play around with you point of view and see if you like it and see, have some kind of experimental writing experience by using either an omniscient or a you point of view and see what happens. But typically that's not what, if you picked up a novel at a store, you're not typically going to find those two points of view in commercial fiction. And lastly, what I want to talk about is head hopping. So that means when you're jumping from, my head to that head to that head to that head, right? You're going from character to character. And to me, that never works too well. I know there's like really famous authors that do this all the time effectively, but it pulls me personally as a reader out of the story. So I'm experiencing the story through character A. Character A is going through all this, and I'm hearing the feelings, and all of a sudden I'm in somebody else's, and it's like, well, wait a minute, what just happened here? I thought I was following this person, now I'm following this person. Okay, so I'll follow this person. Then you jump back to another one. It's like, oh my God. So it's really confusing sometimes when you're bouncing around. A good way to do this, though, is if you want to be in multiple, characters' heads, is to give each character their scene, sometimes their whole chapter, but definitely like their scene. So this is the scene. I'm going to see what happened in this event through this one point of view. The next scene, you could jump to the next person and maybe show their reactions to what just happened so that you can experience that same scene through two different characters, but one at a time. Okay. So again, that might just be me, but I know a lot of people who feel this way. So it's not just me. And again, some people don't mind at all. So it's something that you have to decide on your own. As a writer, it's definitely easier to stick with one point of view at a time. You're just responsible for seeing, feeling, experiencing, thinking, everything through one character. And then again, the next scene, you can jump to a different character. That works best for me. If you're a beginning writer, I definitely recommend just keeping to one point of view at a time, not changing within the one scene. One of the things I've seen done pretty effectively is in romances is the love scene, the sex scene. Maybe because the two characters are so intimately connected during this experience, it works better, like what he's feeling, what she's feeling. You just have to be super clear, on what's happening because there's a lot, especially a lot of body parts, a lot of stuff happening, a lot of emotions happening during a sex scene. But it does work a little better sometimes to have both points of view within that one scene. But rarely does it really work great all the time if you're jumping heads from character to character. So there's a lot of great books out there on writing point of view. If you feel that you are, this is something that you want to work on, that you need to work on, look up, Google point of view characters, pick up a few books on point of view, and read as much as you can about it, and practice, because that's the best way to get better at writing, right? It's just to practice. So practice writing from point of view. Try all the different, first person, third person, second person, and even, omniscient if you want to, and see how it feels. How do you, what is your style? What's the best style? Some people say first person is definitely their favorite because they can get into that character's head better. Some people really like the third person. It distances you a little bit from the character, but especially the way we write these days, right, is the third person is almost like a first person close, right? It's just saying he and she, but we're really, really deeply in that character's head. It still feels like a first person character to me. Okay, so I hope this has helped. If it has, please share this with other writers. Hit the like and the subscribe button so that so that you'll be notified again when my next video comes out, and it helps my channel. So I appreciate that. I'll see you next week.